Liberty Nation with Tim Donner.
And now it is time, some would say, including Scott, it's beyond time to bring on our regular contributor, constitutional lawyer, LibertyNation.com legal affairs editor, and our own personal guardian of individual liberty, Scott Cosenza. Hello, Scott.
Hello, Tim.
Nice to have you aboard once again. Let's go right to the Supremes, and I don't mean the music group. The Supreme Court siding with President Trump on speedy deportation of asylum seekers.
Tim, it's been a disappointing week for Supreme Court watchers because of their slow pace of releasing decisions. We got two this week. I don't think either of them were blockbusters. This decision has to do with the formalities that somebody has to go through if they come to the United States and seek asylum and the authorities determine their asylum request is to be denied, and then what due process rights they have going forward. It's a 7-2 case with multiple decisions. And basically what it was is the conservatives all seemed to agree that the law was fine, that allowed some limited due process rights for these types of applicants. And then the liberals were split, with Breyer and Ginsburg agreeing with the ruling, and then dissenting necessarily that there's a more broad application for this ruling. And Sotomayor and Kagan, who dissented both in the ruling and then in their reasoning.
So this is an issue, deportations, people seeking asylum, the border, illegal immigration, all back on the table, but not nearly to the degree they were before, because of course we're in the middle of a cultural revolution, Scott, but a lot of it involves the police, and it probably doesn't help the story that was released this week that police have arrested the wrong man based on facial recognition, according to the American Civil Liberties Union.
This is a case out of Detroit, and the name is Robert Williams. And the stories indicate, Tim, that he may be the first person ever falsely arrested due to facial recognition technology, at least that we know of. That's what's being widely publicized. And Detroit police basically were investigating a shoplifting theft from a watch store. And they just got an image from the security camera at the watch store and put it through their database of millions of images. And Mr. Williams' image came up, and they basically called him on the phone. They knew he's not like a on the lam or something. He's just a solid citizen in Detroit. They called him and told him to come down to be placed under arrest. He thought it was a joke. He drove home from work that day and was actually arrested and held for over 24 hours until the police finally agreed that they were mistaken. One of the police reforms that we could talk about would be some kind of very significant liability payout system when the police, without proper evidence, arrest somebody and steal their liberty for a day or more. The respect for individual rights has got us from slavery to where we are now in terms of the recognition of rights of all human beings.
Amen.
If we want to go with collectivized notions of justice, we can expect simply to see fewer cases where individuals are vindicated for the violation of their rights, because an individual can't be damaged if they're not held up as an individual. It's a right. It's a groupthink thing then.
And that's where we are, circa 2020. Now, let's talk about the Supreme Court now, but in this case, the Ohio Supreme Court upholding an anti-speed camera law.
There are some states that are just a hotbed of speed ticket, what's the right word? Highwaymen? You almost
speed
want to
traps. Speed
like
traps, yeah.
And not just that, but that they've used the automated ticketing system to just fill their own coffers, to spend money how they like. And the Ohio legislature and the Supreme Court has said that people who are accused of speeding via one of these automated processes get the chance, if they wish to challenge their ticket, they get a hearing in front of a judge. But Toledo tried to put these people through a sort of an administrative process rather than a judicial hearing. And of course, that benefits them two ways. Number one, it's much less expensive to maintain an administrative hearing sort of body rather than an actual judicial process. And number two, of course, it's much easier for them to prevail at an administrative hearing that they set up that doesn't have to obey traditional notions of due process and fair evidence.
Those court costs add up pretty fast for the defense, don't they, Scott?
Absolutely.
Now, this next story, you sent this to me, and it seems so bizarre that I didn't even bother to look it up because only you could explain what this means. Devin Nunes cannot sue Twitter over a fake cow account.
Tim, unfortunately, Devin Nunes does not have a thick skin. He is the opposite. He's the most perhaps thin-skinned member of Congress I can think of. And he has coupled that with a penchant for a disrespect for First Amendment and the right to dissent. He manifests that chiefly, Tim, by trying to sue people who criticize him publicly. And the reason why we know it's sort of a dishonest way to do it is he doesn't sue them in the jurisdiction where he lives or works or where the people who criticize them live or work or where Twitter has their servers, for instance. He does it in places that have laws that are basically, they don't protect the little guy. And that's why he has sued in Virginia, for instance, a number of Twitter users. The named party in this suit is at Devin Cow. There's another one that purports to be his mother. And these are satirical.
You can't make this stuff up.
Yeah. And of course, the right thing to do is either play along or ignore it if you're the politician, right? But to try to unmask the user and then demonize them and perhaps sort of do all the things that we decry often against the left, I think is a poor choice. And this is a very good decision, Tim, for free speech. It says that Twitter enjoys the protection from the Communication Decency Act. They didn't do anything wrong. And the tweets in question are not criminal and won't be unmasked.
How about the cows? Is there an uprising among cattle about this?
I think the jury's still out there.
Okay. You'll report back to us on that next week, I'm sure. Finally, Scott, California voters get to decide the fate of a ban on affirmative action.
Oh, wow. What an upsetting story, Tim, that California may actually move now back to a system where people are being legally able to be discriminated against by the color of their skin. This has to do with the California Civil Rights Initiative, which undid the state racial preference system that had existed for so long. I'm kind of at a loss just because it seems like so poisonous to kind of reintroduce race as a reason to accept or deny somebody, for instance, in higher education. We know, Tim, that if that is implemented, the worst people to have it are Asians who are massively discriminated against. And perhaps the tiniest of minorities see the best in terms of like Native Americans, they get the biggest bump. But this classification of people into race and giving them rewards or punishment based on their own skin color is it's anathema to liberty and freedom.
Well, in this era of white privilege shaming, Scott, I'm sure that the pro-affirmative action stance will fly through.
It's important to remember that under current federal law, it is only illegal to discriminate against some races and not others. And that's chiefly what the California provision would do.
Thank you, Scott.
Thanks, Tim.